When World War I erupted, the difference between the military strategies of the opposing powers was stark. The Allies still saw warfare as an honorable and traditional pursuit marked by clear battles and formal engagements. In contrast, Germany focused on technology and swift, brutal tactics. This divide became especially clear at sea. Britain, confident in its massive, prestigious navy, relied on colossal battleships bristling with guns. Yet many of these vessels were outdated. The German Imperial Navy recognized that challenging the Royal Navy directly would be suicidal. Instead, they put their faith in a new weapon, the submarine or U-boat. While not the only nation building submarines, Germany used theirs with far more vision and ruthlessness. Though Britain had more submarines at the start of the war, German U-boats were used strategically and independently, roaming far from fleets, hunting without warning. This tactic proved devastating. In September 1914, the German U-9 sank 3 British cruisers in under 2 hours, claiming the lives of over 1,400 sailors. In May 1915, the infamous U-20 torpedoed the passenger liner RMS Lusitania, killing nearly 1,200 people, including many Americans. Over the next 6 months, U-boats would sink over 1 million tons of shipping while the Royal Navy scrambled to respond. At their peak, the German Navy had over 140 U-boats in operation. Their captains became national heroes, wild, daring figures given freedom to hunt at will. It was into this deadly, mysterious world that UB-65 was born. UB-65 was designed to operate near shore lines, carrying 10 torpedoes to strike enemy vessels before returning for more. Built at the Vulcan shipyards in Hamburg in 1917, she never had a chance at a normal beginning. From her earliest days, disaster stalked her. During construction, 2 workers were crushed by a collapsing girder, one killed instantly, the other trapped and screaming for hours before dying in agony. Later, as her engines were tested, 3 mechanics were found dead in the engine room, killed by leaked diesel fumes. Even after launching, things didn't improve. On one trial run, a freak wave struck the vessel, sweeping a lookout overboard. His body was never recovered. In another test, a ballast failure sent UB-65 hurtling to the seafloor, trapping her crew for 12 hours before they managed to surface. On yet another trial, another gas leak killed 2 more men. To the crew, it was obvious this boat was cursed. Sailors, already a superstitious bunch, whispered that UB-65 was haunted. Their captain, Martin Scheller, was young but determined. He knew the war was shifting against Germany. U-boats were being lost faster than ever, and the Navy needed every working vessel. He pushed forward with crew training and insisted the strange mishaps would not derail the mission. UB-65's maiden patrol was scheduled for late summer 1917, but yet another tragedy delayed it. While torpedoes were being loaded, one inexplicably exploded. The blast seriously injured 5 sailors and destroyed part of the forward compartment. One of the injured was the second officer, Lieutenant Richter. He would later die of his wounds. It took weeks to repair the sub and replace the crew. At last, in October 1917, UB-65 left port and began her first mission. The patrol went well. Scheller and his men sank 5 enemy vessels, including the British warship HMS Arbutus, but then the hauntings began. One night, as Captain Scheller was reviewing maps in his quarters, a crewman knocked on his door, pale and trembling. He said something was wrong on deck. Scheller climbed to the conning tower and found the lookout, a man named Peterson, lying on the floor in shock. When pressed, Peterson described seeing a figure standing on the forward deck, an officer in uniform wearing a cap and GREATCOAT. When he called out, the man turned around and Peterson recognized the face. It was Lieutenant Richter. Then the figure vanished into the night. Scheller berated the sailor, accusing him of cowardice and drunkenness. He warned that spreading ghost stories would result in punishment. But the tale had already spread, and as Scheller returned to his cabin, he noticed the wary stares of his crew. Days later, more screams broke the morning calm. The sub had surfaced to recharge its batteries. As the new lookout climbed into the tower, he felt a hand tap his shoulder. He turned and saw Richter again, smiling. He screamed, lost his footing, and fell down the ladder, breaking his leg. Other sailors rushed to help, and two swore they had seen the ghostly officer standing silently above them before vanishing once more. Scheller again threatened punishment, but this time he wasn't so confident. The ghost sightings intensified, too. Engineers reported seeing Richter standing behind them in the control room, observing their work before walking straight through a solid steel wall. During their next patrol, no enemy ships were sunk. Scheller believed fear had taken hold of his crew, paralyzing them. Reluctantly, he included the sightings in his patrol report, requesting new crewmen. When UB-65 returned to her base at Wilhelmshaven, yet another tragedy struck in the forward torpedo room. A sailor saw Richter's ghost and panicked. Screaming, he forced his way through the boat, burst through the hatch, and threw himself into the sea. Scheller and others witnessed the suicide and saw the ghost standing nearby before fading into nothing. To the Navy's credit, they took the reports seriously. UB-65 had been too problematic for too long. An exorcism was arranged by a Lutheran pastor, and most of the crew were replaced. The next two patrols were quiet, no hauntings. No accidents. Then came the final voyage. On July 10, 1918, UB-65 was spotted by the American submarine Elta near the Cornish coast. The German vessel was sitting still on the surface, oddly tilted to one side. Through binoculars, the American commander, Lieutenant Commander Augustine Grant, saw a lone figure standing on deck, an officer staring silently out to sea. Just as the Americans prepared to fire, UB-65 shuddered violently, as though rocked by an internal explosion. Without a single shot fired, she sank beneath the waves. Grant and his crew searched the area for hours. No wreckage, no survivors. All 37 souls aboard UB-65 were lost. It wasn't until 2004 that UB-65 was found again. A British documentary team located her wreck resting deep on the seafloor. The sub was remarkably intact. There was no visible damage to suggest she'd been hit or attacked, but something strange stood out. The rear hatches were open, implying that some of the crew had tried and failed to escape. Was it the ghost of Lieutenant Richter that Grant saw in those final moments? Was his spirit responsible for the destruction of the ship? Captain Scheller had certainly believed so. Why else would he risk ridicule by reporting the events to his superiors? But UB-65 isn't the only submarine to carry a story like this. Just months before the UB-65 disaster, the British ship HMS Coreopsis encountered another German U-boat, UB-85, off the coast of Belfast. The sub was partially flooded, and its crew was rescued by the Royal Navy. When questioned, the captain, Gunter Kreck, gave a bizarre explanation. His sub had surfaced for routine battery charging when a monster emerged from the sea and attacked. He described it as having horns and glowing red eyes. It coiled around the deck gun, tearing into the sub and flooding the interior. His men opened fire with pistols until the beast finally slid back into the sea despite ridicule. Kreck never changed his story. Decades later, in 2016, UB-85's wreck was found. Again, no damage indicating a torpedo or mine. Another U-boat commander, Georg von Forstner of U-28, claimed in 1915 to have seen a massive sea creature launched into the air by an exploding British ship. Life aboard a submarine in World War I was grueling, claustrophobic, unsanitary, and filled with constant danger. Sailors spent weeks submerged, never knowing if a depth charge or a leak might end them instantly. Under such conditions, fear could easily blossom into superstition, but in the case of UB-65, skepticism is difficult. These weren't one-off sightings from lone individuals. Dozens of trained military men reported what they saw. And they had nothing to gain from telling ghost stories, only risk to their careers. The sea remains one of Earth's final frontiers, dark, vast, and unknowable. Perhaps sometimes it pushes back, and somewhere off the coast of Cornwall, a steel coffin rests on the seabed, its secrets sealed inside, along with the souls of the men who died within. May they rest in peace.